What is up, guys? My dad and I are working on my Toyota Century right now. He's a custom exhaust specialist. He's been working on building custom exhausts his entire life. So whenever any of my projects call for a custom exhaust or anything like that, I am blessed enough to have him help me out on these projects. So he's kind of put his thinking cap on, and we're basically just doing from the axle back from a dual exhaust into one out the rear bumper. So that's what we're working on at the moment. Not too bad. It's been a day that I haven't worked on the Century. I was waiting on high polished stainless tailpipe to come in from Summit Racing, and no parts stores locally carry any of that stuff in stock. So I ordered one from Summit. My father's been instrumental in helping me get this exhaust finished up. I've got some new hangers in the back here, which aren't normally OEM. The tailpipes come back as dual exhaust from the V8. It's a little 4-liter V8 up front, and it stays duals all the way over the axle to what normally was a giant muffler that accumulated both pipes and went out to a single tailpipe out the back. So there were no hangers here originally because the muffler in the back here had two pretty serious hangers that carried most of the entire exhaust. The catalytic converters here have some mounts as well, and so that kind of carried the rest of the system. Since we're not putting a muffler in here, I've made some hangers here that are come off these like clamps. They're pretty serious. They're rubber, so there is some dampening to them. But I drilled some holes and mounted them like pretty rigidly before they go up over the axle. So what my father's done is he's built this accumulator pipe. So as you can see here, as the pipes come up and over the axle, we've connected from the factory OEM pipe. That pipe is metric and it's just under 1 3/4 inches. So what we've done is we've expanded an 1 3/4 inches piece here to mate to that. We're ultimately going to clamp them here and here, so this whole rear system can be removed and come off. But what we've done is we've gone from 1 3/4 inches expanded to 2 inch into this 2.5 inch piece here. Driver's side muffler connects here as well, and now they're accumulated. 2.5 inch pipe out to a glass pack here. And now I've got the high polished stainless steel tailpipe that's going to come out off the exit from the bumper. They sell this piece in a 4-foot piece, and I didn't need anywhere near that much. I only need about 18 inches or so to get from the muffler out beyond the bumper. But I'll have enough left for any other tailpipe that I may want to build on a future project or something like that. So going to get that in. I also got an oil filter, cross-referenced part number for the Century. Since the 4-liter 5V EU V8 that came in this Toyota Century only came in this car, and Toyota never exported this car out of Japan, there's no Toyota Century parts available in any database really in America. So I cross-referenced some part numbers from the Century filter that's in there, that's more than likely been in there since Japan. And as Toyota does, basically the oil filter part number cross-referenced to a slew of other Toyota vehicles, both from 4-liter V8s that are in like the Tundras, I think, and some of the V6s, and I think even down into some of the 4-cylinders all shared the same oil filter. And I'm not well versed enough on Toyota to really know offhand what kind of bridged from platform to platform and what didn't. But I got a filter. I'm going to do an oil change in this, a much needed oil change in this. I haven't changed the oil since I bought the car in Seattle and we drove over 3,000 miles across America. The filter that's in this car looks pretty OEM. It's got Toyota logos and Japanese writing on it. So I'm assuming the oil hasn't been changed since it even got imported to America, which was a few years, at least 2 years before I even bought the car. So I don't know how many miles it was driven before I even bought it and then ultimately drove it across America. So it is long overdue for an oil change. We kept good oil in it on our drive, made sure it was topped off and all that, but it's due for an oil change for sure. So gonna do that, gonna get that out, get the belly pan put back on it. So I've got the oil pretty much done draining, gonna get the filter off. Once the belly pan comes off of this car, like the plastic belly pan, the filter's right there and super easy to get at. With some of these cars that we've never worked on before that never came to the States, it's almost like you're discovering it for the first time. Once you take it apart, you know, you kind of understand or don't understand what they were thinking when they put some of these cars together. These cars run almost everything off of vacuum. The vacuum distribution center or hub under the hood is quite scary looking. I'm not a tech by trade, so when I see stuff like that, I'm like, if I have a vacuum leak somewhere, it's going to take me forever to figure out where it is and how to fix it and all that. So far so good on everything on this car, but it's filled with as much Japanese technology from 1991 as they could put in a car. I mean, it's literally got everything from fiber optics to the luxury to ride control and dampening. The motor mounts are basically shock dampeners in this car. It's really quite an incredibly designed and hand-built car. So we just finished up the exhaust, got it hung and got the tip put on it, and pretty stoked on how it sounds. It's got that proper V8 rumble without sounding too raspy or too loud decibel wise. But we're gonna go down the road with it now, and that way we can kind of get a feel for how it sounds under load, and hopefully it's not too raspy or blatty or anything like that. Just want a nice, elegant, kind of throaty V8 sound of the car that kind of mimics its aesthetic look as well. So other big news is my 1952 5-window Chevy cab over has officially moved for the first time in 5 years. Not under its own power, but it was sitting up in here across the yard for 5 years under a tarp after my dad and I got quite a bit done on this project back in 2014. And it's really my own fault for putting this thing on a back burner. I kept buying other projects that I felt like I could get done faster, or I don't know. It's just bad car ADD basically. And this poor thing has been sitting for 5 years and it's in a far worse state of disrepair than it was when we left it. And it's really been bumming me out. So my dad and I moved it down here just in front of the shop on the pavement, and already my motivation on this truck is through the roof. Just seeing it out of its grave that it had been sinking into, it's on the pavement, it's right in front of the shop, looks more like a truck again. I'm super excited about this project. I'm not excited about the amount of work I have to redo because of the length of time it sat out in the elements. But this is a 1952 5-window Chevy cab over. We've got it on a more modern 95 Dodge 2nd gen 1-ton 2-wheel drive dually chassis. So it's going to have, you know, modern braking, modern gearing. It'll drive like a modern truck. It's got a 6BT P-pump 12-valve mechanical injected Cummins turbo diesel in it. I've got an NV4500 5-speed manual transmission behind it, which has proved to be a lot more work inside the cabin with the amount of space that we do not have now with the Cummins in there. And we've body dropped the cab down over the motor too, so the truck will lay out when it's on air, which basically the front is now. So having to mess with 3 pedals in that cab now with the limited space and a custom steering column has proven to be kind of difficult. And now I see why a lot of guys that do projects like this just do an automatic transmission, because there's less space and you don't have to worry about basically plumbing in a clutch cable or clutch pedal. Now that this is closer to the shop, once the Century's sorted out, I'm really going to start plucking away on this thing. I know a lot of people on Instagram have been giving me a hard time about this, which is good because it's served as motivation. I'm really excited to dive into this truck. Yeah, so anyway, that's on the back burner still, but moving its way to the front burner. Century is front burner at the moment. Gonna get that finished and then move on to the cab over. So we're taking it for a spin. It needs fuel anyway, so my good friend Rob just swung by in his German Mark 1 Volkswagen Polo, and we're gonna swing into town. Actually, the first drive on the air suspension since I finished the suspension, and now that we get the exhaust done, can kind of test everything out. Gonna get some fuel, maybe another coffee, and head back here and hang out at the yard. And I'll get a good walk around of Rob's Mark 1 too when we get back. So took it into town for its first drive, and rides really well. Rides better than it did when I first finished the front air suspension in it. So pretty happy about that. And yeah, just excited to have it out of the shop. Exhaust is done and cruising. So Rob and I are out here at Weirs Beach, just outside of Laconia, New Hampshire, and the drive-in is open, which is packed. You see the queue of people coming down the hill? Yeah, that's all waiting to get into the drive-through.
I've never seen anyone there before.
But we're down here at like a little plaza, taking some photos of Rob's German Mark 1 Polo, which a mutual friend of ours owned. He's got a pretty sizable Volkswagen collection. Decided to start liquidating stuff and kind of condensing his collection. So I bought a right-hand drive Mark 1.5 Volkswagen Derby off of him a few years ago, and Rob bought this German spec Mark 1 Polo off of him as well. And it's on air suspension on 13x8, I think, right?
Yep.
13x8 race lines?
Revolution Classics.
Revolution Classics. Yeah, really cool little 4-spoke wheel. I got a soft spot for 4-spoke wheels. But we're out here in the Century too, really happy with the new exhaust, especially with decibel and tone. Couldn't be happier. I mean, it's just, you never know when you're building an exhaust from scratch, basically. You never know what it's gonna sound like or how loud it's gonna be. So this came out just the way I wanted it. It's not too loud, especially at idle. It's like just enough to have that V8 rumble, just enough to like know that it's there. And under load, under throttle, it's really not that. Not that. But yeah, under throttle, going up hills and stuff, it's not blatty, it's not raspy, it's got a nice rounded, smooth V8 tone. Again, not like that. Nice and subtle. And it fits the aesthetic of the car. When it lays down, it has this menacing look, especially with the tinted windows being black. The wheels, you know, complement the chrome trim. Yeah, I'm super stoked on this car.